Hello, Mendel Hella. Okay, we're now live. So, our topic for tonight is going to be the ability to understand the soul, Kabbalah of the soul, and the fundamentals of what it means to be who you are. In other words, understanding yourself, your soul, etc. Hello, Joe. So we're going to get into that. As we're getting settled down tonight, I'm going to start with just a little reminder of a story, that one of my favorite stories. The story is of a Russian peasant Jew that he gets onto a train, and as he's boarding a train, he asks the conductor, "Are there any beds available tonight?" He says, "Well, all the beds have already been taken, but there's one bed in first class. It's been given to a Russian general." He says, "If you want, you can go and sleep with that Russian general. There's a second bed in that room." So he says, "Okay, I have to get up at this in the stop in Kharkov, and please make sure to wake me up at 4 a.m. when we get to that stop." So anyway, he goes to bed, he gets undressed, puts on his pajamas, goes for good sleep while the train is driving. And several hours later, he gets a knock on the door. Next stop is Kharkov. He quickly gets dressed and walks himself out. And as he comes out of the train station, there's a big mirror. And in the mirror, he sees this Russian general standing there in front of the mirror. So he says, "Oh boy, the Russian general was woken up. What about me? Hey, how am I going to get out? I'm going to be late. I'm going to miss my stop." Obviously, it's supposed to be a humorous joke. Thanks, Yochanan. I'll have to laugh at my own jokes. The point is that one of the fundamental concepts in Hasidus, and particularly Chabad Hasidus and Kabbalah, is the knowledge of who you are. This story may be a joke, or may sound like a joke, but it's not really. Because very often we think of ourselves in relation to something else or to someone else. And we've had this discussion before numerous times, because in Hasidus, this will always come up. Today, I wanted to take a different approach. So if you bear with me, I'm going to draw some pictures for you tonight. I'm going to go back to nursery school, and I'll be drawing pictures. I have a new laptop, and one of the great things about this laptop is its touch. So it allows me to draw pictures as I speak to you, because just in case I get bored, it's always good to have something to draw, right? All right, so just confirm, this is my first time using this particular thing live in a share. So you are not my guinea pigs, you are, what's the right word? You are the pioneers. Instead of guinea pigs, you're my pioneers in checking how the system works. Okay, so I don't want to waste more of your time. We as human beings, and feel free to unmute yourself and answer my questions, I'll be more interactive, are made up of two parts in general. What are those two parts? Anybody, somebody?
Body and soul.
Thank you. Good. So it wasn't a trick question. Just in case some people thought it was a trick question. It was not a trick question. Sorry, give me a second to make this a bit bigger. Okay, so we made up in two parts. So let's divide this up. Sum of Daled. And now my handwriting is not going to be read, but hopefully it will be legible. Okay, this is what I do in school. So I'm trying to give you a copy of one of my classes. Body, and then we have a soul. Why is it automatically making cursor for me? Okay. Now, when we think of ourselves and who we are, what do we usually think of as being the main us? Who is the main person? Like, who is us? most people think of themselves, and you've probably seen me discuss this concept before, as this is me. And this is my spiritual counterpart, I'll call it. Is my writing. At the end of the class, you can give me feedback on whether or not this is a good feature we should be using in the future. We could always use PowerPoints, but this is more sometimes in a way more interactive. So that's the way most people think. This is me, and this is like my spiritual connected, somewhat far away in the distance, not exactly me. Okay, and that's the way most people think when they hear the word soul. However, the truth is that in Hasidus, we have the total opposite perspective, as you have probably heard numerous times. So we have soul and we have body. In Hasidus, the difference is that soul is actually I / you. That's who you are. Okay. And this, what is body? Body is where I live. Don't worry, I'm not going to be doing this the whole class. So if you're getting distracted by it, don't worry. Okay. Just to introduce things. So I have soul and I have body. The soul is who I am. That's me. How do I know this? In other words, most people say, oh, you don't know that you have a soul. You just, it's religion. Soul is religion. It's like some type of foreign belief. In Hasidus and Judaism, no, we say, no. Hold on. You talk about your body. Who's that body? Whose is it? The soul is you. I talk about my soul. Who's I? Who's I? It's not my body. Is it my toe? Is it my finger? Is it my brain? All those things are just elements of me, but they're not me. I is the neshama, the soul. That's a fundamental difference. Why? Because it takes the soul from being some distant, faraway thing that people talk about as an unprovable thing. And I say, hold on, what to me, when people say, oh, there's no evidence of a soul, I say, is there evidence that you exist? Well, that's you, that's the soul. It's not like some spiritual, okay, maybe you don't believe in spirituality, but what are you? Do you exist? And that's a simple question. Can you prove to me that the soul exists? I don't know. Can I prove to you that you exist? Prove to me that Joe Stosser exists. Well, he's right there. Well, that's his body. But where's he? I don't know. Well, the body is twinkling, his eyes. Maybe he's there. So do you have any evidence? I think you do. The evidence is that you are you. Now we are going to reframe it and say the evidence is because you know that you exist, correct? You know that you are you. You haven't figured out maybe who you are. You may think that you're some Russian general listening to Putin somewhere, hopefully not, but you do acknowledge that you exist. Okay? I'm going to pause for a moment because I think Joe wanted to say something.
Well, an analogy, or not an analogy, an extension of what you're saying came to me while you were outlining that. If a person believes that their body is them and they disregard the soul, so if they have a limb amputated, does that mean there's less of them, that they exist less than they did before? So if they're completely reliant on their physical body for existence and that body reduces, are they less there?
Right, very good question. That's an important point. And we all acknowledge that no, you're just as much there as you were beforehand. And not only that, it hasn't taken away from the actual individual. This is why, by the way, and your point is very, very poignant. This is why it's so important that we don't look at ourselves as our body. This is the fundamental. This is one of the most fundamental. There's several fundamental elements of Hasidus and Yiddishkeit in particular, but this is one of the most fundamental elements, that you are your neshama, not your body. Now, your body is really important, don't get me wrong. And in Hasidus, we ought to also talk about the holiness and specialness of the body. But from the Jewish perspective, from Hasidus perspective, you are you, and that is a soul. So neshama is not some foreign object that people like have no clue what we're talking about. We just use this word when we try to talk about something spiritual, and then people say, can you prove it? What do you mean, can I prove that I exist? Oh, what do you mean? You got a body, but what's the difference between a live body and a dead body? That it breathes? Really? That's all it is? No, there's a serious difference between a live body and a dead body. The only difference between a live body and a dead body is that the live body has a living soul in it, and the dead body doesn't. In other words, in a dead body, there's a human being there. Not a physical human being, a spiritual human being, a being that lives inside that body. It's a soul. A soul is a person. In the Torah, and those that have come to Dingley lately would know that we had a few questions recently about this. Why does it say nefesh? Sometimes it refers to the person as nefesh. It doesn't say a person, it says nefesh. And I think that one of the reasons is because of this, because a person is a nefesh, is a soul. That's who we are. So the fundamental element that we have to understand, or we have to grasp over here, is that in order for us to have the slightest understanding of what it means to be a Jew, or what it means to be a person, is we have to stop defining ourselves by our body. So if my body's feeling weak, that's my body. That's not me. If my body's fat or disabled, that's not me, that's my body. If a person has a particular orientation or sexual orientation, that's not them, that's just an orientation. Okay? And it's just like we don't define ourselves by things we do only from a spiritual point. We define ourselves on our true spiritual existence, which is an infinite divine spark of Hashem. Okay. Now, let's go a little bit deeper and to see who is this person. And when you see that, you will see that when we look in Tanya, we're going to open Tanya for a moment and have a look at how it is on the inside, and the wording is over there. So bear with me. I'll pause the pictures for now. Okay, so let's look inside. In this part of Tanya, what we have is the beginning of the third chapter of Tanya. So if you've learned this, you may think that it's somewhat obvious, but with the introduction I've just given, we'll shed a bit of a new light on it, hopefully. Okay, so we're told as follows. We're told that we as people, good evening, Leon and Irene, good to see you. I don't think I am yet. Okay. It says as follows. Nefesh. We're starting in the beginning of chapter 3. And what we're going to find out is that as a person, our soul, or our spiritual makeup, who we are, is divided into 5 levels, redivided into another 3 levels, and then redivided up again into 10 levels. And then in those 10 levels could apply to all 50, into a total of 50 levels. Does that make sense? Okay, I'll try to divide it up for you. But let's first look in Tanya, and it's not going to be so complicated. It says, look inside the lines at the beginning. Vinay, kol bechino madrega mishalish elu. all these three distinction levels. Now, what are these three that we're going to talk about? They were spoken about in the previous chapter of Tanya. And what are they? They're known as the nefesh, the ruach, and the neshama. Klula me'eser bechinos. A soul is made up in general of three parts. One part, what's the word for a soul?
Neshama or ruach.
Or,
Ruach.
good, and what's the third name? Joe? What's the third name for a soul?
Nefesh. Nefesh.
Nefesh. So you see all those three levels. The truth is that we use those words intermittently. But the truth is that all three of them refer to different elements of the person. Okay? So of who you are, is when I refer to the nefesh, if I call you a nefesh, it really refers to a particular element of your soul. When I refer to your ruach, it's another element of your soul. When I refer to neshama, it's a different element of the soul. And he doesn't even mention there's another two that we brought down in Kabbalah that are not mentioned over here. So he says each of these three parts, and I'll explain to you what I mean. Don't get lost on me for a moment. Bear with me for a second. Each of these are made up of 10 attributes. 10 sfirot. So look at you. So let's look at what it's saying. Let me try to. I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board, if you don't mind, and I'm going to have to draw this. Good evening, Irene. Good to see you. I'm going to share the other board because it will just be easier for me to redivide it up for you. Okay, so we're made up of 5 parts. I'm going to be looking downwards, so my apologies. Part number 1 is, it's called Yechidah. I'll translate in a moment. And this means the essential spark or essence. Apologies for the messy handwriting. Number 2. Sorry, I touched the wrong thing. Number 2 is called Chaya, which means life force. Number 3 is known as Neshama. And I'm going to explain to you what that means in a moment. Number 4 is Ruach. Number 5 is Nefesh. So I'm going to put 2 divides. Number 1, number 2. They're really all very different. So when I look at these 5 parts of your soul, this is the soul makeup. Now in Tanya, we don't talk much about the first two, these 2 parts, which is known as Yechidah and Chaya. This is the essence of your soul. In other words, this is the very core of who you are. Oh, it's drawing by itself. Sorry. Real marker is a bit easier to use. Sorry, it comes out neater with a real marker. This is your core. This is the essence of your soul. And this essence of your soul is also made up of 10 elements, 10 attributes. And we're going to explain to you what those 10 attributes, but I just want to show you the breakup. Then we have the Chaya. The Chaya refers to your life force, but this is it's where your will and your desire comes from. Okay? Could I just pause for a moment? Is everybody okay with what I'm writing on the board? Is it clear? Is it legible? I know it's not neat. That I'm very aware of, that I can see. But is it okay? If it's very annoying, let me know. But I'm just trying to be interactive this way and clearer for you. Okay. So your will.
That's good.
That's good? Okay.
Yep.
All right, good. So your life force and your will and desire, that's known as your chai. That's the second part. So that's the part of the soul. So these 2 parts, the first 2, 1 and 2, we don't talk much about in Tanya, but in later Hasidus And in other books of the founder of Chassid the Alter Rebbe, and particularly in the Rebbe and the Fut Chabad Rebbe, in other Hasidic masters, especially the Rebbe, we focus a lot on this level, 1 and 2, because we go down to the core. In Tanya, we focus more on what is regularly the regular makeup of a person. Okay, so the third part of the soul is the neshama, which mainly relates, apologies for looking down, to the intellect of an individual. Okay, then we have the ruach, which mainly I'm going to write for those that helps them a Hebrew word. Then we have something known as emotions. The Hebrew word for emotions is midot. Then, what do you think? What's left? Sorry, what's left that we haven't yet discussed? Anybody could think of what's the last piece that we haven't yet discussed? Nefesh. So this is why in-person classes are a bit better, because it's easier to you don't have to press anything to talk. You just talk. Okay. Anyway, nefesh refers to what? To which part of the person? To the active part of the person. So we're going to call it the Hebrew term, or the Kabbalistic term is this. And if you don't know it, it will be surprising, but if you know it, you'll understand what it means. Or levushim, garments. But the real meaning of that is modes of expression. Okay? How you express yourself, which is divided, we're going to talk about this later, into 3 parts. Number 1, thought. 3, speech. Now some of you are wondering why thoughts there, and the third one is action. Yeah? Okay. So this is what a person is. This is the makeup of a person. Now, if you've learned Tanya, this may seem relatively basic stuff to you, but we want to try to delve into it a bit further tonight and see if we can make sense of it a bit more. So when we talk about, we're going to focus tonight on one element of all of this. The lines of Tanya, so just to make a bit of sense of those few lines of Tanya, what I've said is, he said, this part is made up of 10, this part has 10, this part has 10. Oh, I don't know why it's doing that. This part has 10, etc. Okay, each part has 10 to it. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. So really, we made up, however, there's going to be the primary of each of them is going to be, so what are the 10? The 10 is that this is, I'm going to show you what I mean now. Okay, so I hope this is clear, and I'll explain to you what the 10 are. Okay. So does anybody have any questions before I go on?
Oh, I've got lots, but I'm just trying to understand, is this one proposed model for understanding, or is like not the entire Jewish spectrum, that not everyone accepts Kabbalah, for example? So this way of understanding the anatomy of the soul, is that universally accepted?
Okay, let me question your question, if that's okay with you. Okay, who doesn't accept Kabbalah?
Well, I mean, I can name a few individuals in Melbourne, but
No.
in general,
I'm talking about scholars that the Orthodox world, as mainstream Judaism, holds in the highest regard, and there's no debate whether or not those people are of the highest standards. In other words, one of the great rabbis or scholars of history, and take one of those. Some some guy that claims to be an atheist and also doesn't believe in Kabbalah is not much of an opinion when we're talking about faith subjects, if they don't believe in the first place. I'm talking about a reputable opinion to start off with. Give me the name of a reputable opinion that does not accept Kabbalah.
Okay. So let's assume that. All right. So we'll start off with Kabbalah is accepted. I'll take that one back. The Zohar I know is a bit more controversial, but the Kabbalah is more.
Zohar is controversial. Zohar is Kabbalah. It's the initial blueprint of Kabbalah. So who doesn't accept the Zohar?
Okay, a whole other topic. So we'll go with Kabbalah. That's fine. And then, so there's this discussion of a template, yeah, for the anatomy of the Shoma, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, hopefully you'll understand this a bit better as we go on. You will understand it better as we go on. Okay.
I'll hold off for the question.
You'll hold on because all I've given you now is words and models. I have not at all given you any description. And by the way, I appreciate every single one of your questions, even though I may sometimes disagree with the premise of the question. That doesn't mean I don't like them. So please don't take offense to anything I may have said. Okay. So just putting it out there, any type of question coming from any field is perfectly acceptable, and accepted with the joy and love. So I appreciate all the questions and thank you for doing that. But let me try to explain to you what I just wrote for you on the board. I explained to you that we have 5 different parts of the soul. Now, in general, as human beings, I think we can all agree that we're divided into 3 general parts. And those 3 general parts are our intellect, our emotion, and our modes of expression of that intellect and emotion. Okay, is that clear? Is that agreed upon? Okay, so let's go.
Can you please repeat what
I'm going
you
to
just
draw it
said?
for you right now, and I'm going to repeat it as it because I want it to be very clear. So I'm going to draw it if that's okay. And once again, apologies for the neatness of the thing. Okay. So let's look at what the makeup of a person. I'm going to once again divide us into 3 categories. Okay. So we have the, so to speak, beyond elements of the person. Apologies, looking down again. What are these 3 elements of the person? So when I spoke, we have the essence or the core. Is the core or essence of the soul. That's number 1. Number 2, we have your will and desires. You can maybe even stick over there pleasure. Have some space. Okay. That's all part of one point. Is that clear? Now, those 2 elements are also part of your internal makeup. Then we speak about that your internal makeup is redivided into another further into intellect. And number 4, emotions. Number 5, modes of expression. And I wrote down earlier what the modes of expression are. Okay. I know it would be great if we could keep on changing colors, but it's going to be a bit difficult for me this time. I'm just using this for the first time. Now, is this what I've just presented for you? Is that clear? Does that make sense? Is that acceptable? Any arguments? And I don't mind anybody being a devil's advocate and challenging it. I want it to be as clear as possible.
Can I start off being the devil's advocate?
Please do.
Okay, because earlier we started with the separation between soul and body, and I asked the question, like if someone has an amputation, for example, the body changes, do they change, do they become a different person? But if they're who they are, their identity is vested in the soul, not the body, then they stayed the same person, just the body's altered a little bit. So that's okay. But some of the attributes that we're looking at right now on that screen, if a person has, I don't know, a stroke or some other condition which changes their mental state, does that mean their soul's changed?
No. No. Okay, you're asking a really good question. It's a bit beyond tonight's discussion because it's almost like, okay, so this is the point of what we're going to get. I'm going to pause this for a moment so I could have a better view of all of you. To clarify your question, which is a really good question, if I'm saying that you are really your soul, but we know that sometimes the body, the soul, and then I'm saying that your emotions and your intellect are parts of the soul. So therefore, if there's a change in the body which causes, let's say, trauma, stress, amputation, stroke, heart issues, all these things, which we know can affect the way a person feels and thinks. So then seemingly that's having a change on the soul, correct? Have I got the question correct? So here's the important point. Nobody is arguing about whether or not the body has an impact on the soul. 100% your body has a massive impact on your soul, except for one part of your soul. Which part of your soul does your body not have an impact on, or not a major, or not a proper impact on?
Presumably in that model Yechida, the core?
Yes, the core. But all the other elements, and especially the lower three, will be directly affected to the occurrences of the body. They will be directly affected by it, because those are fully housed inside the body. Yochanan, I saw you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question about, carry on from what Joe said about, illness. I mean, we call illness can be caused through hereditary connection. So going on from there, does that mean your connection, your soul is connected to your family and it goes down the line? So there's a connection way, way down, way back. The soul's passed on. There's a connection between families as well of your line.
That's a fascinating question. The answer to that question is, I think so, but I can't be 100% sure. I do believe that there are elements of Kabbalah that speak about soul connections amongst family, especially in the works of the Arizal. I believe that it is touched upon over there, but I'm not extremely well versed in that, so I don't have an exact answer. But my understanding is, yes, that there will be a soul connection as well, because the souls all come. Well, ultimately, we talk about in the previous chapter, this is chapter 3 in Tanya, but chapter 2 in Tanya talks about how all souls, I actually kind of jumped the gun over here by skipping chapter 2, but I wanted to focus on a particular subject tonight. I've spoken about elements from chapter 2 all the time, about the godly soul and animal soul, keeps them coming up. So I don't want to talk about that much tonight. But chapter 2 does describe how all souls are part of a big major soul, and then they divide up into kind of family souls. So my understanding based on that is that, yes, there is a family connection within souls. That's my understanding. I may be mistaken, but that's what I think. Okay. So hopefully that clarifies what I've said. that yes, even though you are your soul, it doesn't mean that your soul is not affected by your body. 100% it is affected. Except for, and this is what's important, except for the core of your soul, which is your essence, your chida, that can never be tarnished and damaged. That's your essential bond with your absolute infinite spiritual being, with God. That cannot be severed, not can be disconnected, no matter what happened to your body. But that point is only revealed at particular moments, like at a life-threatening situation, or a need to sacrifice your life because somebody has put your whole Judaism on the line, so to speak. At those moments, that part will become revealed. But most of the time, we don't have to live in that situation. We don't tap into our yechida. Only maybe extremely righteous person lives with that part of them in expression, or manages to tap into it. Now, there's the chaya, the second part also, to a certain part, is affected by your body and certain part aren't. In other words, it's your inner personality of what you desire internally. That's where your soul, your desires and wills come from. That will be partially affected by your body, but not fully. Okay, so that's why that part we also left out, because it's somewhat beyond who you are within your body. So let's get him back onto the screen. We have this part, which I'm going to call beyond, because I mean beyond your body. That's your core and your will and desire. That's not something that you say lives necessarily inside the body. Okay. Then your intellect is housed within your mind. So that is inside your brain. You're aware. And emotions is connected to the heart / brain. The heart part, emotional element part of your brain, which does have a connection to your heart. It's physically felt inside your heart. That part of your body is where you feel it. And then your expression is by the rest of your body. So it would be your mouth, your hands, feet, etc. And of course, your thoughts are from your mind as well. Okay, so just trying to show you where everything is housed. This is kind of beyond. We're saying that your core and essence, while it may be there, but it's the absolute consciousness beyond your physical existence. It will be affected, and all the memories of your mind will be affected, but it goes beyond that. Now, what I'm going to do for the continuation of our discussion tonight is kind of erase these two parts because they're a bit beyond our discussion, and focus on the lower three for now, because that's what we have inside what we know as the 10 sfirot. Now, these three elements, which is the intellect, the emotion, and the modes of expression, divide into 10 levels. Okay? So 10 levels, and the levels are known. So what are the 10 levels? Oh, that's thick. So the 10 level, sorry. 10 levels, or known as Sefirot. Now, I want to show you something, if you don't mind. Bear with me for a moment. We know that there's two lines that we have in the Torah. The first one says, in the image of God. What, could anybody finish off the sentence for me? B'tselem Elokim Nivra
Nivra
Adam.
Adam, yeah, sorry.
So in other words, you could say like this: in the image of God, he created man. That's one verse. Where's that verse from? Bereshit, Genesis. The second one, now I think the second one is from the book of Job, of Eov, but it's brought down a lot in Tanakh, and that is this. I'll write it first in Hebrew. Mibsari echze Elokai, which means in my flesh, sorry, it's not in my flesh, but from my flesh. From my flesh, I perceive God. Okay. Now, when you look at these two things, these two lines, do you see any connection of what does it bring any questions to you? Do you have any questions based on that?
Well, Rabbi, I mean, the first one obviously is that God doesn't look like a human. So what do you mean in the image of God, man is made? We're not.
Okay.
That it doesn't mean that.
Right. And if you read the second line, what would you, if I were to tell you there's a connection, what would you say is the meaning of that first one?
The essence of Hashem. The Rambam in Moreh Nevuchim explains in the first chapter that it's the essence that he's talking about in the first one.
Good. So let me just clear this for a moment. What we're saying is, and what you guys are both correct, I just want to bring that out, that there's 10 Sfirot, and we're told that we're made in the image of God. Now, many people don't understand. Some Christians try to take this literally and say that God is somewhat of like has human characteristics. But what this means from a Jewish perspective is that Hashem uses 10 modes with which to create the world. And we call those 10 Sfirot. So God expresses himself in 10 modes, are known as 10 Sfirot. And he gives to us the ability to somehow have elements of those original 10 Sfirot. Now, how many abilities does God have?
Infinite.
Infinite. Good. Infinite. So why does God only use 10? Because if he used every single ability that he had, so to speak, to create the world, we would have an infinite world. We would not have a physical world. So because the physical world by definition is physical, God by definition had to use, is limited, is finite. Therefore, by definition, in order to God create, he only wanted to create it with finite abilities, and he chooses 10. And of course, those 10 could be divided up into myriads of many more. But in general, he divides it up into 10 from his infinite book of choices. And from those 10, he gives us 10 attributes that we can relate to them. So when the first line is from Genesis and says, God created you I created B'Tselem Elokim Nivra Adam, I created man in my image. He's saying, I created you with my capabilities. But, there's a big but, not the way they are by me, but elements of them. In other words, a slight element of them. Has anybody ever heard of the term Hishtaltalut? Or in English, you would call that evolution, right? Who created the concept of evolution? I don't know, but it dates way back before Darwin. Evolution is a fundamental concept within Judaism that things evolve and adapt. That is a truism of the world, a fact. Things change and adapt. And the first major workings that describe this, as far as I know, is Kabbalah. And in Kabbalah, it calls it, it uses the way things come from one level to another as evolution or ishtalshalut, one thing. So let's go back. I'm going to change the screen for a moment. Oh, I was supposed to go to the other screen. If you look over here and you look at the second line, it says a person, first one is talking about a person, is made up of three parts of their soul, known as the nefesh, ruach, and neshama. And they made up of 10 attributes. So what are those 10 attributes? By us, we call 10 faculties. He calls it faculties or levels of elements. And those go on, correspond to the 10 svirot el-yonot, shenishtal shlum of him, where they originated from. They came down. But when they came down, they're not the same way they were originally. They're very different. They have elements that are the same, and that's why we give them the same name, but we clearly say, machshavotai lo machshavotem, my thoughts are not your thoughts. Kulam b'chachma says God and his wisdom, he made it through wisdom. He made through wisdom. Clearly we're seeing that his wisdom is not like our wisdom. Okay, so we have plenty of proofs it's not the same, but there's still elements which are the same. Okay, so that's why by God we call them sfirot. By humans in Kabbalah, we refer to them as bechinot, as faculties. Okay? That's the word, bechina, or faculty. So what's a sphera? A sphera is a divine manifestation, because the word sphera, like we have now, sphera to omer, right? And during sphera to omer, we enumerate different elements of these different faculties. But we talk about them how they are by God, and we call them sphirot. The word sphira means to illuminate, to shine. So let's go back. What are these 10 faculties? Let's continue. They generally, he says, they're generally divided into two. Two general categories of sphirot, or levels of faculties. We call them three mothers. Why? Because they're the root of all the sphirot. They're where everything comes from. We don't always refer to them. And then we have the 7 doubles. Why? Because each of them has a 2-fold element to them. They double. Okay? So let's look at what this means. Let me go back to my drawing board, my favorite drawing board, if you don't mind. I don't know how to do it without going out. Okay, so in general, when we talk about this, we refer to it as follows. There's 10 attributes that we have, people have. It's divided into 10 faculties. Sorry, there's something in front of me. 10 faculties divided into 2. Intellect. Then you have emotion. What is the intellect parts? We know that, and I was hoping to get a bit further today, but that's okay. Is known as Chabad, or Chabad stands for Chachma. Second one is Bina. The third one is Dat. Right? That's how you get Chabad. Chachma. Now, what is Chachma? How do we translate Chachma? Loosely, we translate it as wisdom. So then we have Bina, which is understanding. And then we have dat, knowledge. Now, I was hoping to spend a bit more time on Chachma because it's a really powerful thing, but we're not going to have time to really delve into it tonight, but hopefully in the future. Then we have our emotions. Now, emotions, how many emotions do we have? Anybody want to guess? 6. Okay, right. So it's Chachma. Most people think it's 7. It's really, sorry. Oops. Chesed. Chesed. Gevura. Tiferet. Now, what this means, and apologies for all the time in between, I'm going to try to stop. What this means is as follows. In general, we as people are divided into 2 categories that make us up internally. Internally, we have our wisdom, our intellect, and our emotions. That's the internal makeup of a person. And then we have our emotional makeup of us. And generally, the best way for things to work is we start on the top and we go down to the bottom, which means we start with intellect and we work our way down to emotion. And we go through the emotions, and we'll discuss what those emotions are. But for most people, and a lot of the time, we're acting from a different perspective, where things start from our emotions and go up to our intellect. What that means is we change the order. And we'll talk about that a bit later on and on another date, but I just want to point that out. This is the way people are supposed to work. So in general, when we refer to what we read in the Tanya over there is this. The intellect is divided into three parts, and those 3 parts are known as mother. What does it mean mother? Because when we are acting in a healthy space, they will give birth to positive emotions. Hence the name Chabad. Why we called Chabad? Because we want to focus that things should start from the intellect and then come down to emotion. Now, then we go down to emotion, and within emotion, we have different elements of our emotion. And our main emotions is going to be Chesed, Gevura, and Tiferes. And those are the 3 that I wrote down. Tonight, by the way, is the attribute of Sfirat Omer. Tonight is night 25. It's the exactly middle night tonight. And it's Netzach Shevanetzach. It's the victory over victory, or the perseverance or over perseverance, the ability to overly persevere. That's tonight's attribute. That's a, so to speak, a more subtle element. But in general, we have ourselves divided into 6 emotions. And then there's one final category which we've left out, which we haven't come to, as the makeup of a person. And that is what? How they express themselves. Okay, and known as garments. And that's the attribute of Malchut, speech. Okay, and there's a lot more that I want to discuss, but I'm noticing the time. I did this a bit more detailed than I was initially planning on doing it. But does anybody have any questions before I conclude on what I've said, or doesn't understand, disagrees? I want to go back to Joe for a second, because you piqued my interest over there, and you asked the question: is this this makeup of a soul, is this agreed upon by all, or is this an accepted? Now, what I had shown you at the beginning was how that's divided in general, and now I've redivided it as essence or core of the soul, your drivers, which is your will and your desire, and then your wisdom, your intellectual elements, and then your emotions, and then your modes of expression. That's the way Kabbalah generally makes up how a soul is made up. And that's how, when you look at that, you say, oh, it's clear, a soul is a person. And in order to live and to do that last element, which is the modes of expression, you require a body. So therefore I say you live in the body. Now, what do you, this is a question pointed at Joe because he raised it in the first place, and I wanted to see if it's clear. Do you think that this is a misconception or perhaps not agreed upon? Where do you think, now that I've explained it, where do you think we're looking?
Where I'm coming from with this, well, let's see, how many centuries old is this perspective?
That's a really difficult question.
Because what I'm thinking is, for example, if we have someone who's in a vegetative state, they're in a coma, vegetative, they're still clearly alive, but there's no emotions, there's minimal brain activity. So, and I'm just trying to reconcile that presentation with this model, and I'm seeing it as a model, a perspective on the anatomy of the soul and how it works.
Okay, let me ask you a question. So based on your question, first of all, I haven't answered to the question, but I don't want to get there. First, I'd like you to think, how else would you describe the anatomy of the soul, or how else would you think to describe it?
Well, but for the soul to be perpetual and non-destructive, it would need to be separate from the brain. It would need to be able to exist when the brain is no longer there. So the brain may be the seat of the soul, but the soul needs to have an existence beyond the brain. And that's a fascinating question. So how much of a person's identity is in the soul and how much is part of the body? And if the soul, is reincarnated into a different body, does that new person have the same attributes as the previous host? Or, I mean, there's so many questions raised by this model.
I'm not disagreeing with you, but my question is, because you have questions, I have no problem with questions. My question is, so some people say, well, the approach must be wrong because we have questions, and therefore the questions pose a difficulty to the model.
I understand, Rabbi. No, I don't have that sort of an issue because I'm studying a similar thing with physics, with quantum mechanics and physics, a similar thing where they have models, right? We all need a conceptual model to try to understand something. So I don't have a problem with the model. The problem may become when people rely on a model too much and assume it's 100% true until some evidence comes along that questions the model and says, okay, maybe we didn't get the model quite right. Maybe it doesn't match real life experience. Maybe there's something missing.
Oh, okay. If there's more details to this model, the answer is yes. And that's why I mentioned it's made up of 3 in 10. This is superly very dumbed down model. It's a really dumbed down model. It's a very basic model. And that's what we're going to start investigating and understanding this model. And what are those? I just gave you terminology today. And therefore, if you've studied Tanya, this would be fairly obvious stuff, to be honest. It's relatively obvious stuff if you've studied it before. But an understanding of what each thing, you'll see how they work, is a lot deeper than each element.
Is it necessary to believe in the validity of the model to study further?
No. No, it's not. You don't have to. But my question is, even if you were atheistic in theory, or you didn't believe in Kabbalah or this type of spiritual, I don't understand how other type of model you would have, what other type of model you would have, other than this model. Because to me, this is not so there's certain parts of Kabbalah, which are beyond our understanding, and they're given over as spiritual truths. But this is a perceivable, logical truth. In other words, we see the way we work in this model. So therefore, I'm not understanding why anybody would not accept this model, whether they believe in spirituality or not. You could call it biological. You could call it, I don't know, human nature that we've, or evolution, whatever you want to call it. But this is what we perceive and how a person is. The only difference is that I will call this your soul and your internal makeup, versus some person may want to call some scientific description.
Well, sure. I mean, other words could be, say, a conscious state or sentience. So that's in the science world, you know, that's what the words they would use for that.
Right.
But they don't
use the word soul.
Yeah, but they don't then address what happens to those things when the body ceases to function. What happens to those qualities? Where do they go?
Science just has to give some type of terminology to it, and they believe as well. If I believe and I call it a soul, then I'm acknowledging God. I'm not acknowledging spirituality, and therefore, obviously, science doesn't want to go in that direction. Science is not the science of spirituality; it's the science of the physical. And trying to learn about spirituality from science is like trying to learn maths from a doorknob. It's just two different things. They don't have the ability to talk one to the other at this point, right? There are two very different modes of training. So I'm hoping that's clear. But I want to, Yochanan, I'll see if I unmuted yourself.
I was just going to ask a question in relation to, your soul. Is there some, might be a way of some proof, I don't know, but people who have a cardiac arrest, let's say, or people on the operating table, they sometimes have this out-of-body experience where they're looking down on themselves, and it's not uncommon. Could that be some maybe proof that there is a soul, that you have an out-of-body experience when you die? Sometimes you're brought back to life and you think, wow, I remember seeing myself from above.
And sometimes people, and there's been evidence of this, and it's been recorded, and I believe that several universities, including I think maybe Berkeley University in California, did a whole massive survey on out-of-body experiences or near-death experiences, and it's been verified, and it's definitely is something that, if you want to believe in it, it's true. If you believe the thousands or tens of thousands of people that have had them, and very often those people will have experiences which is way beyond their reality, and they'll see things like other people's life stories, and they'll have details and be privy to parts of people's lives that there's absolutely no way they could have known and seen, and those are examples when, if you want, as I say, the proof is there if you want to accept it. But when people don't want to accept it, there's no proof that can give it to them, because those type of people will only be looking for something that they could see under a magnifying glass. And if you can't prove it, and by the way, as a side point, and I hope nobody takes offense to this, but from my perspective, people that only believe in what you see or what is perceivable to the physical eye are living a very, the unpolitical word is shallow, but I don't want to say that, so I'll pretend I didn't say that. They're living a very different type of life, right? It's a life where they're not seeing beyond the surface, and that's very sad. There's a famous story that I say about somebody that the Russian teacher in communist days was saying to his students, look, can you see God? Can you see the table? Can you see that? You can't see. You can see the table exists. You can't see God. God doesn't exist. And the student says, well, can you see the teacher's brain? No, you can't. So therefore the teacher's brain doesn't exist. The very fact that people today's day and age, it's an obvious truth that even in science, that what you see is not what you get, right? And that's something that people didn't understand back in the day. But today's day and age, for people to still believe that we are what we perceive to be is so shallow. It's so missing the point. It's so not true. And we all understand that things like pandemics and things like what's happening in the world, there's so much deeper. It's not just what people think. And do I have the answers to what is happening? No, that would have to be a prophet, or at least a prophet and perhaps God, to give you the explanation. But to believe that there is something going on, to me is an obvious truth. Is it a scientifically supportable truth? Well, it depends what your level of tolerance is for those type of elements. But I certainly believe that there's evidence of proof for those that are open to it in all types of areas of everybody's life. And anybody can perceive their own existence and say, well, if you're defining my soul as me, yes, nobody could argue with that. And that's what Hasidus does. That's what Kabbalah does. It just doesn't say it's some spiritual. Most people say, well, how do you know there's a soul? Because they think you're talking about something foreign. And that's why I started off with. I want to just answer one more question that Joe brought up. And then he spoke about somebody that's in a vegetative state. And you mentioned the term has no emotions or knows. That itself, we know that very often people in those vegetative states or in coma like vegetative states have had those incredible out-of-body experiences and have had incredible emotions and felt things. And some people, very few, but some have lived to tell the story. People that they wanted to pull the plug on and things like that. So if you would ask them, all those people that did live to tell the story, they will tell you that they were 100% had emotions, and they 100% had intellect, and they 100% had all their faculties in place. The only thing they couldn't do was their modes of expression. They could not speak and act, but everything else they could. They couldn't move, but everything else was going on. So Yochanan has perhaps answered your question, Joe. If you're willing to accept it, as I say, and I understand why some people don't want to accept it, I'm not judging them, but that I feel like that for most people is an acceptable answer. And therefore, I think, in answer to Joe's question, that this model certainly is a foolproof model. It does apply to all people at all times. It's just the way people perceive it and how they look at it. But is it always there and always intact? Yes. Okay. If you have a person that has mental health issues or is got mentally, even is born with I don't know what the that is with special needs mentally and things like that, then perhaps yes, maybe we can say that such a person works differently, and their brain works differently, but their soul doesn't. And just the way their soul reflects their body. So the way our soul, when our soul comes into our body, it gets directly impacted by our body. And therefore, if a person has a natural brain that is open to perceiving things, that will affect the soul. If a person has eyes that can see, or a person is, God forbid, blind, that will have an impact on what a person feels and sees in his soul. All the things that occur to the body have direct impact in the soul. Okay. I'm hoping in future weeks, if I decide, if people are still interested, and I'm more than happy for people to private message me afterwards if they want to continue, but on this path, to delve into some of those elements of the soul, and to get a real understanding of a proper understanding of the knowledge and anatomy of the soul in a bit deeper way. Today we just said words and a very broad view. And my hope is that we will get a deeper view. I know that people have studied Tanya, some of the stuff, or a lot of some of the stuff will be obvious, but as we go deeper, we will learn a lot deeper concepts and hopefully have a much deeper understanding of ourselves And we believe, when I say we, as I say, the Hasidic masters believed, and the Kabbalistic masters, that the greater understanding that we have of ourselves and the way we work, the greater people we can become ultimately. If we don't know what we're working with, we're going to struggle to reach our real potential. It doesn't mean that people that didn't study this didn't, or didn't have incredible impact. They certainly did. But if we're looking to have that impact, having the knowledge of the tools with which we have, that will be the greatest tool or greatest vessel that we have to make that happen. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. Once again, if anybody has any further questions, you're welcome to stay on or message me afterwards. If anybody is interested in coming in person, I know Yochanan, it might be a bit of a trip for you, but if anybody does want to come in person, I know that some people that haven't been coming have messaged to me that when we do start in person, they will rejoin. And I'm hoping that if there's a group of people that want in person, we will definitely continue to offer the classes online, and it will just be from a room of people being presented. So I might not have my eyes on the screen always, but it will be the same thing. And I'm hoping to have a microphone in the middle of the room so that if people do make comments, the people that are online will be able to be fully present, and maybe have a screen that the people that are present can see the people online, etc., so that it could feel like a kind of joint class. Obviously, it's you know, everyone should join in the way that best suits them. Okay, so any feedback about anything is always appreciated. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much. Yashar Koach. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Irene. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.